So over the next about 15 minutes or so, I'll go through a little bit of an introduction of DAO design or organizational design, whether you're already part of a DAO or whether you're just starting one, or let's say organizations, because I'll get into DAO a little bit later. It will be kind of relevant for you to understand a few principles, I think. And even if you're just a contributor, I would say that you can always keep in mind that you're part of designing the organization that you're part of, from your actions, from the governance that you're participating in. So a couple of these principles might be also helpful, even if you're just a contributor. Before I start, I want to emphasize or actually thank everybody from DeepWork for kind of being part of the organization over the last 4 years. They've been active actors in a system that I was able to build and design and also do a lot of research on and understand how things work and how people organize efficiently. So even though nobody actually has an obligation to work because everybody's a freelancer, everybody was or is still excited about doing the work. And over the last 4 years, we designed over 40 different projects that most of them you will be familiar with. Before I, actually, one more thing. How many of you are like freelancers or have a business? So like have the understanding of having their own business? Okay. Oh, that's quite a lot. Okay, cool. I'm kind of asking that every time because I'm curious how that transforms. And what I realized from just interpersonal communication or conversations is that there's more and more of a transition from people leaving full-time jobs and kind of getting more into something that's a freelance commitment because they find or seek meaning in their work or that they can't find in normal or, let's say, legacy institutions, legacy organizations. And I think they're right. The actual notion of work is currently something like that's a disutility, something that people don't necessarily need to like and want to be doing. And it has been different. So before the Middle Ages, work was just like a part of life. It was like sleeping or eating. And through the Middle Ages, the idea of, or like the actual word of work has been directly connected to the fact of being a good person. So if you work hard, you'll earn profits. The profits get donated to the church decides to distribute it to the poor people. God thinks that's a great thing. And so everybody's happy, everybody's a part of an integral society. And that same mental model has also transitioned to the industrialization, except there the factory owners would distribute the profits how they wanted. And, but still the idea of doing hard work, even if you don't like it, persisted. And neoclassical economists have picked up on this and described that this must be the way that the economy works because people work hard. They earn money and then they afford leisure or afford spending a lot on a lot of other things, and so the economy grows from that, and that must be how it works. And the reason why I'm mentioning that is because I actually think that if we're thinking about designing organizations or like thinking about work, it's not a productive way to think about how people actually work. I think the much kind of healthier approach is to start with the fact that people actually love their work. If it's meaningful, if they have the feeling that they're being compensated equally, and if they have the ability to collaborate and create positive sum experiences with other people that who they can learn from as well. And of course, the whole process to getting there, and this is like everybody of you who has a business or freelancer knows that process is very explorative to actually get to that point. There's a lot of things that fail. It's an own innovation process that just costs a lot of effort and time that you don't have necessarily if you just get to a full-time job. But I think that's kind of the point to actually start, is by figuring out the actual kind of meaning of even on an individual level, and especially in an organization. It's like, or like in an openly permissionless organization, people should understand the value of their work individually. So what's the problem that you're solving individually? Like, and you can kind of specify that quite precisely by saying, or by defining your expertise by becoming comfortable with the things that you're doing well. So, I mean, this is kind of part of this innovation process. So you're defining your comfort in the things that you're doing well, you're specializing on that, and then you're projectizing it or productizing it so that you can actually communicate that, and then you kind of communicate to your environment, assign it a cost or a price, and then based on the interaction with your environment, you actually understand the value of your work over time. And then the important part in that is that it's always advisable to not delegate a lot of the work to someone else, especially if you're working or like if you're having a team that you're not trying to kind of do the work that yourself and like hope that someone else will do it. I'm saying that because I hear I talk a lot with startups who just have this great idea, but then we just need developers, we just need funding, and then we're gonna get developers and they'll build it out. I wouldn't say that's the most productive approach. But anyway, so in an organization, obviously, the more people you have that focus, that have this deep expertise, the larger will be the environment that you can cover. And as organizational designers, we can create these environments for people to work best together. So on an individual level, you care about your sleep, your workouts, your healthy nutrition. That's something that keeps you sustainable. And these things can also transfer onto an organizational level. And like, there's obviously a lot of other things, but I would say that keeping those in mind really helps fostering this positive sum experience. And it also makes it easier to attract people. So if you don't want to hire, and I think in the future organizations will not actually need to have these kind of formal HR processes of hiring individuals, because we see that on online forums like Reddit. People just come in and start contributing, and they're happy, and then maybe there's more that comes out of it. But I think that's a dynamic that can also emerge from the organization as long as you're being transparent about everything. So it's kind of two things. You just specify what exactly is happening in the organization. So, you know, like the projects. I'll get into exactly how that, like what details are useful to share, and who's working on what. And obviously, like maybe like how maybe you have some cultural things, but being transparent about that is almost like this kind of onboarding documentation that a lot of DAOs are struggling with. Like, how do you actually onboard people? Well, in essence, it's not doing memes or entertainment. It's just showing exactly what you're doing and who's doing what. And then it's easier for users to just come in. I'm also a big fan of being very transparent about financial details. DeepWork, for example, you can just, or in DeepWork, you can look into exactly what the prices of specific projects, what the rates are, so that people actually know how much they get compensated. Actually, like in terms of the transparency, organizations like Bridgewater or McKinsey are really good examples. They're in an enclosed ecosystem, but I think with Web3 tools, we actually have the ability to make that, to widen that up, because obviously you want to kind of, I would recommend staying as far as possible on the transparency side, but at the same time, there's the problem that as long as it's connected to humans who are doing the work, the people still need to carry the ability to decide on what they would like to share about themselves or others. So this is a whole different topic about reputation that I'm not going to go into this presentation, but if you're kind of thinking about transparency, keep in mind that people sometimes want to decide if they want to disclose everything or if they don't want to just share only part of that information with, let's say, their next organization or with a different organization. Do you have a question?
Is it okay?
Yeah, sure.
As you mentioning all these principles, I cannot help but think that a lot of these would also apply in a modern workspace.
You are correct.
This is just like
yes.
the holy grail. Unfortunately, not well implemented in modern corporate world.
This is funny. Like, this is exactly my next point. None of these things are like new. It's like, it's stuff that's already around, and it's ideas and concepts that already exist. You don't need blockchain for it. You don't need Web3 for it. It's all things that are actually applicable to any organization. And I think that obviously with Web3 tools, we can kind of fantasize and build out possibilities to scale these things in a very secure manner. But I don't think that's like worth or at least I don't want to focus on that right now, because I think we need to first solve the things that you're mentioning. So first, let's just talk about like business and like creating organizations that are sustainable, so that people are actually, you know, working and are sustainable together as a collective. And then yeah, I think that's why I would also say, that's why I mentioned earlier, I actually don't think that DAOs really exist yet. It's like, it's a concept, it's a thing people made up, by textbook definition at least. Like, people have different definitions on what the DAO is. But if you look at, there's actually excellent research work by my friends Michael Zargam and Kelsey Navin on the so-called viable system model. It's been around for a while. I highly recommend reading up on it. Also, not going to go into this right now because it's a bit more complicated. It's quite technical, but like from a socioeconomic perspective, technical. But it describes the way that an organization can look more like a biological model. And the way that I would kind of communicate it, or like explain it for now, is like, the idea of a DAO that we want is almost like, we want the permissionlessness of an online forum, so everybody can kind of contribute and just join in, but also with the kind of viable business and the value structure and social dynamics of a company, or like of a business. And so kind of the combination of those, that's hopefully going to represent the principles of a DAO, because then they're like infinitely scalable, but at the same time they're also profitable and stay that way. So yeah, do you want to, no. If you have any questions, also please let me know, or raise your hand. Okay, cool, nice. Okay, so yeah, in terms of design, so I'm going to go through a couple of things that might be supportive in terms of thinking about designing an organization that should be as flexible as possible. This is one notion that applies to kind of any type of design. So if you're designing a product, or like a physical thing, or an organization, essentially what you're doing is you're looking at how humans behave, you're making some hypotheses, creating some hypotheses, and then you're evaluating how you want to support people with doing more of what they want to do anyway. And then you basically, like the design, or like the kind of the tooling-based design is around automating the work that helps them do more of the things that they want to do anyway. So it's kind of creating these constraints that facilitate their behaviors that they're doing anyway already. You just like picked up on them, and you figured that if they do more of all these things, then it's actually kind of a nice thing to do collectively. So that's the combination, essentially. And then that's what they will also perceive as meaningful work, or like delightful activities in products. It's just an example from the Launchpad that we designed, because it's like the same principles on any like digital product too. And that's what people will perceive as like the meaningful activities, and you don't have to think about like incentivizing them. I think it's like it's the opposite approach that's been around Web3 for quite a long time, is like, hey, how do we create incentive mechanisms for organizations or for like token models? It's like, well, you don't. You just look at what people are doing anyway, and then you're visualizing that with the tokens or with any other digital tools. It's actually also especially important for value exchange, so with token models, because now you're like, if you just create a token and put it on Uniswap, assign it some value, and assume some things that people will do it, then you might, well, if the government finds out, then you'll go to jail. But you always want to kind of first find out what exactly is the value that people are transacting, and how do you represent that? And then it might be an NFT, it might be a normal token, it might be a semi-fungible token, or like, you don't know. So like, first observe things and then build on them. The other thing perhaps is, and this is probably one of the more important but also kind of strange things to think about, is so if you're designing an organization that should be resilient, so that is able to adapt in an economically uncertain environment, and you wanted to survive and adapt over time, is the ability to be as flexible as possible. So the only way that I have seen that work really well is essentially being extremely specific about project management, and so extremely delicate about what you communicate, what's going on. So this is referring back to the thing I said in the beginning. And I don't know of any other organization yet that does it in that particular way, but I think that kind of the transition from the flawless, let's say, how do you say it, unspecific work streams that people are just like doing stuff, like operations. It's like, we have these 3 people that do it. So transitioning from something unspecific as that to being very, very specific about individual projects with a clear start, a clear end, a clear process, a very specific outcome, and like a duration and like the roles who would be there, is going to solve a lot of problems. And actually, I mean, this is also not quite new. So this is more or less, you can see the same pattern also in Agile or in like individual project work. So in essence, you want to kind of transition from purely work stream based work to defining these things as much as possible. And then you kind of want to merge that back into, with a goal to create these recurring projects. Because once you have the clear definition of a project and you know that it happens on a recurring basis, then you can be very confident that this is something that's stable, like the world needs that. But at the same time, because it has a clear start and a clear end, it also gives you the opportunity to renegotiate the compensation, or like for everybody for the team. It allows you to onboard new contributors at any point in time, or like, let's say every 2 weeks or every month, which is especially important for permissionless orgs. It also makes people aware that they can be excluded from the organization at any point in time. So what they will do is not rely on the contracts or like on paperwork or on stamps, but they will actually rely on the social relationships that they develop. So they try to be nice to each other, try to make promises and actually stick to them. This is all something that it's kind of easy or like evident if I say it that way, but it was definitely not super evident to me a couple of years ago until I kind of actually started seeing that in the organization. Also, by the way, speaking about reputation, these projects make it a lot easier for people to prove that they have done very specific work in a very specific organization that they can be proud of. And the whole like zero knowledge or like personal transparency thing, I'm going to leave that out for now. But assuming people want to actually show it and want to, yeah, go ahead. Okay. Okay. All right. Well, as long as people feel comfortable with sharing everything about what they've worked on, because everybody has specified what the work was and their position on it, what it was, it makes it a lot easier to carry it around as like portable reputation and makes it easier to work with for them. What did you want to say?
I wanted to ask you about, because a lot of these
Yeah.
concepts, like as you talk through them, I understand and I can
Okay.
relate because I've seen it
Yep.
work well and not so well in certain events. But I also know and realize that a lot of these things depend on good governance.
Right, I'll get to that in a second. This is actually so the good governance is after this, which is in like 2 minutes when I'm finished with the slides. I'll do a quick workshop to show you how we make decisions in DeepWork relatively quickly, collectively, at the speed of like a one-on-one conversation. So the same results that you would have on a one-on-one conversation, but like in a group setting. So yeah, I'll get to that. Very good point as well. Thank you. The other thing is also like with project-based work, if work doesn't happen, like again with the resilience part, economic uncertain environment, then nobody has to do the work. Just to continue on that train of thought. It's almost like serendipitous that this is exactly the next slide. So of course, people have different points of view on what a project should look like. So of course, one person has some understanding or some expectation from a project or from the compensation than someone else. And if you have like 10 people, then it becomes almost impossible, or it just takes ages to get there. That's why I personally, but also there's research from sociocracy that points towards kind of making, like focusing on soft governance and consent-based decisions is actually going to make generally improve the quality of the governance. And a lot of organizations run, or like let's say Web3 based collaborations, organizations run quickly to tools like Snapshot because it's popular for direct democracy. But if you use that right away, it's actually going to always leave people unhappy with the result. So I kind of want to make sure that people are always, at least always had a discussion on it. And there's in sociocracy, there's a nice kind of model about that everybody has a preference, just like a little circle. And then, let's say you have two people, everybody has their kind of range of preference, and they might not overlap. So they might have different opinions about a specific topic. But then everybody also has a range of tolerance around that. And so the goal of a conversation is almost at least find an overlap in the range of tolerance so that they find at least kind of what they agree with in some way. And for some people it will be in their preference zone, for some people it will be just fine. But these things almost need a discussion, and we'll see later how that works in practice, because design thinking is actually quite a nice tool, using Post-its. It's very, very simple, it's very easy to learn. There's always new things to learn as you work with people, because you kind of need to facilitate these things. But yeah, I'll show you how that works, and it's always kind of it just makes a lot of things a lot faster, saves a lot of time. Also another thing to the note of none of these things actually need Web3 tools. So I'll go through a couple of tools that I use more to show you to inspire you to try things out yourself, because Typeform and Zapier are a great combination to use almost as an interface, like a user interface where people enter data, and then that can be connected to literally any tool you know of. So you input data, and then you kind of show it on Discord or feed it into a Google Doc. And it's you don't need programming, but you essentially can replicate a lot of software that way. Did you want to ask something?
Use case example of using Typeform and Zapier and
Yeah.
shuttling that information to Discord?
Yeah, I mean, of course, an easy use case for us, for example, is we have client projects. So we don't just want to funnel every single person into the client projects. We want to be as transparent as possible, but we just want to make sure that people don't do stupid things on camera, or smoke and eat, or make your mind up. Everything happened. So we need people to almost sign an agreement that yes, I will not do silly things on camera. And what we do is essentially you go on Discord, you have one channel open, there's a link to a Typeform where you fill out your name, where you read the rules, where you download a document, where you sign a document, you upload it again, you submit the Typeform. Once you submit it, you receive, you also note your your Discord username. So you automatically receive a badge in Discord that unlocks all the channels, and the agreement form gets saved in Google Drive. That's not public, but it's in our kind of possession, so that we know that yes, you've signed it. You're now part of the organization. Now you can see the client projects and actually read through the stuff that normally would be hidden away. That makes it I don't have to read through all of the applications or do it as a human. So, but all of these things can there's a lot more. So anything that you would expect someone to, or let's say invoicing or something, you just ask people to enter their data, how much they want to get paid, and then that gets either pushed to Discord and shows everybody, hey, this person is requesting this amount of money, and by the way, it's also generated what do you call it, an invoice for them to download. So there's really a lot of things that you can do. Anything that you can come up with, I would highly recommend playing around with it. It's very easy.
Are there Discord bots involved in here?
So Zapier is a Discord bot. So, or they also have one, let's say. But there's also other Discord bots, yeah. But this Zapier has their own built-in one. Discord I use for the roles. So if someone completes a project and I know exactly the work that they have done, that's saved in a documentation, because we also have a public documentation on exactly the work that needs to be done. So you can, if you want to become a user researcher, you just look through exactly what's required to be a user researcher. It's actually almost like a tutorial on how to be one. You can even like learn, like a lot of people actually learn from that and do their own things. Yeah, Google Sheets for finance stuff, obviously. Project management, Asana is kind of nice because you can assign, like you can show who's working on what with these little bubbles, and it also has a public view. Notion, similar. Sobel is quite cool. It is mostly for like holacratic or sociocratic organizations, but it makes it very easy to see who is part of what kind of department or who kind of has which skills. They also have an integration with Discord, so you can kind of read out their roles, and that will be connected to the groups that they're in that structure. Just a good tool. Yeah, this is a tool that we're building. It's just an MVP so far, and it's actually, the use case of it is very, very narrow. It's almost like only for DeepWork. But it's for organizations that already have a business model, which have very specific roles and very specific projects, and that also only have freelancers. So it would work for something like a film production studio maybe, or like a currently design studio. We also have one other organization. They're basically creating like physical events, little conference event spaces. But that's kind of the prototype for a lot of these principles. So you can also check it out and just like browse through it and have a look how it looks. And I appreciate any feedback, positive or negative, because it helps me understand if I'm missing out on something. There's a lot of things that are still missing in it. But yeah, I went through a lot of things. All of these are barely scratching the surface. Talked about innovation, radical transparency, design for emergence, the project-based work, and the soft governance. If you have any other questions, also like never hesitate to shout out or add me on Twitter or Instagram. Send me a message. I read through all questions and I reply to all questions. I also share some educational material on a regular basis that go a little bit deeper into these things, and also share a couple of like backgrounds and like actual real references or from other organizations or what I see in other projects. So yeah, last but not least, thank you so much for your interest in design.